The night was alive with fury. The kind that didn't just fall from the sky, it screamed through it. The storm clawed at the ruins of an ancient Roman marketplace, lightning slicing through the heavens like blades of judgment. Stone columns cracked and shuddered under the weight of centuries and rain. And through it all, a woman ran. Barefoot. Bleeding. The echo of her steps collided with the roar of the storm. Her breath was sharp, uneven, the kind that carried fear and defiance in equal measure. Her ankle was cut open, each step leaving behind a red trail that vanished almost instantly beneath the relentless downpour. Chains still hung from her wrists. Iron, heavy, cold, a cruel reminder of the auction block she'd just escaped. Those same wrists had been bound while men shouted prices, while eyes that glowed gold and crimson studied her like she was prey. They had called her Barren. Cursed. The infertile witch of the northern clans. And yet, she wasn't broken. Her name was Aurelia, though no one had spoken it with kindness in years. Tonight, she wasn't a prisoner. She wasn't the girl the council mocked, or the woman they discarded. She was running, breathless, wild, driven by something deeper than fear. Behind her, the marketplace was chaos. The torches still burned at the platform where she'd been paraded, the old Roman stones stained with her blood, her tears, her fury. The scent of smoke clung to the air, thick and bitter. Wolves howled in the distance. Not just beasts, but men in their other skin. The hunt had begun. The fog rolled low and heavy across the ground, curling around her ankles like chains made of shadow. It was so thick it swallowed the world whole, muting the shapes of the broken pillars and the half-toppled statues of forgotten gods. The storm wasn't just outside her. It was inside her. Each heartbeat carried more than fear, it carried something that wanted out. Something she'd buried long ago. Her pulse thundered against the rain. Her vision blurred. Her hands trembled, not from cold, but from the silver glow beginning to spread beneath her skin. That light, faint, flickering, was her curse. Or maybe it was her power. Aurelia didn't know anymore. All she knew was that it frightened them, the alphas, the priests, the vampires who paid to own her. And if it frightened them, it meant she was dangerous. And if she was dangerous, she could survive. A gust of wind slammed against her face, dragging her backward. The marble beneath her feet was slick with rain, every step a gamble between freedom and collapse. Her lungs burned, raw from running, from crying, from not knowing if she'd make it out of this alive. She stumbled, hit the ground hard. The taste of iron filled her mouth. For a moment, she stayed down, hands pressed against the cold stone, breath ragged and uneven. The storm hushed. The silence pressed closer. Then she heard it, faint but unmistakable. Footsteps. Not many. Just one pair. Slow. Steady. Confident. Someone was following her. Aurelia pushed herself up, her body shaking. Her hair, wet, tangled, streaked with mud and blood, clung to her face. She looked around the ruins, eyes wide, searching the shadows that moved when the lightning flashed. The old marketplace stretched out before her like a graveyard of gods, toppled columns, shattered altars, and the faint glint of metal where soldiers had once chained their enemies for public spectacle. This was where they auctioned criminals in the Age of Empire. And tonight, history had repeated itself. Except the Empire was gone, and the monsters wore new skins. Her heart raced faster. Her fingers brushed the mark at her neck, a faint circle surrounded by runes that glowed when the moonlight touched them. It pulsed, once, like a heartbeat that wasn't her own. She didn't understand it, not fully. Only that it made her other. And in this world, being different was dangerous. She could still hear the crowd from hours ago. The jeers. The laughter. The whisper that cut through it all. She's the infertile one. The goddess has cursed her womb. They said it like it was a death sentence. Like a woman's worth ended where her bloodline couldn't begin. She wanted to scream that she was more than what her body could or couldn't do. But words had never saved her before, power had. And somewhere deep inside her, that power stirred. It started as warmth, soft, low in her chest, spreading like fire caught on breath. Then it turned sharp, electric. Her skin shimmered faintly with silver light. The air changed. The storm itself seemed to pause, sensing her awakening. Aurelia's fear mixed with something else now, a strange calm, almost acceptance. Because if this was how she'd die, hunted through ruins and rain, at least she'd die fighting. But then came that voice, low, ancient, and far too close. You cannot outrun destiny. She froze. The sound came from everywhere and nowhere, carried by the wind, woven through the thunder. Her pulse stumbled. She turned toward the sound, eyes straining through the mist, through the crimson flashes that danced across the sky. Nothing. Then, movement. A shape emerging from the fog, tall and dark, the outline of a man cloaked in shadows. Her breath hitched. Her instinct screamed to run, but her body disobeyed. Something about him felt familiar. He moved with unnatural grace, not the heavy-footed stride of the hunters who'd chased her before. No armor. No chains. Just presence. Lightning cracked, and for a heartbeat, she saw his face. Pale skin, eyes that burned red like the dying embers of a star. Vampire. She stepped back. Her heel hit broken stone, and pain shot through her ankle. She didn't care. She lifted a broken chain like a weapon, trembling but ready. The man stopped a few paces away. His voice, when it came again, was low. Steady. I'm not here to hurt you. The words sounded sincere. Too sincere. The kind that made you doubt your own fear. But Aurelia didn't lower her arm. She'd been tricked before, by promises, by gentle tones, by men who smiled while tightening chains. The rain softened to a drizzle, the storm retreating into distant murmurs. For a moment, it was just them, two figures surrounded by ruins and ghosts. He tilted his head, studying her like she was both a miracle and a curse. Do you even know what's inside you? He asked. Her chest tightened. Stay away. A small smile touched his lips. If I could. That was when she realized, he wasn't chasing her. He was following something else. Her. The pulse beneath her skin. The same one that now throbbed in the air between them, silver and alive. And the strangest thing happened, the rain bent around him. As if the sky itself refused to touch him. Aurelia didn't know what scared her more, his power or the way her heart slowed when he looked at her. She took another step back, but the fog behind her shifted, thickening, curling like hands around her legs. The ground beneath her feet seemed to hum, ancient magic waking in response to her fear. I said stay away, she shouted. Her voice echoed across the ruins, loud enough to shake loose bits of stone. And yet, the man didn't move. He simply whispered, you shouldn't hide what you are. Then the mark on her neck flared, brighter than ever before. The silver light burst outward, cutting through the fog, illuminating the ruins, the man, the rain. Her chains fell away with a sound like cracking glass. The storm roared back to life, but it was no longer against her, it was answering her. Aurelia fell to her knees, clutching her chest, the fire inside her burning too fast, too bright. Tears streamed down her face as she gasped for air. The power she'd tried to bury all her life was breaking free, and it terrified her. Because she knew once it came out, there was no putting it back. The man stepped forward slowly, rain hissing as it met the heat radiating off her skin. His voice softened. You feel it, don't you? The call. Her voice was barely a whisper. What are you? Lightning cracked again. When she looked up, he was closer, eyes glowing like embers in the dark. He smiled faintly, almost sadly. Someone who's been waiting a very long time for you. The wind howled around them. The ruins trembled. The silver light inside her pulsed harder, syncing with the rhythm of his heartbeat, steady, ancient, unyielding. And for the first time in years, Aurelia wasn't sure if she was running from her fate, or straight into it. The storm faded into a soft, lingering echo, like the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for what came next. And in that silence, a single truth whispered through her chest like a prayer she'd forgotten how to believe. Maybe the gods hadn't cursed her. Maybe they'd chosen her. If your heart's already racing, if you felt her fear, her fire, her fight, then subscribe to Sophie's Romance Collections. Because here, love isn't gentle. It burns. It tests. And it saves. The rain had begun to fall in whispers now, softer, steadier, like the storm itself was watching them. Aurelia's heartbeat was loud enough to fill the silence that stretched between her and the stranger. Her pulse fluttered against her throat as his figure grew clearer in the dim light. He moved with a grace that felt unnatural, as if the ground itself adjusted beneath him, yielding to his presence. The air bent. The raindrops that should have touched him curved away instead, dancing around his shoulders like they feared to stain him. He was not mortal. He stepped into the flicker of a broken torch, and the shadows peeled away, revealing the sharp lines of a face that seemed carved from some ancient grief. Strong jaw, high cheekbones, eyes that glowed faintly crimson, alive, unsettling. Aurelia took a single step backward. The movement was small, but he noticed. His gaze followed her like heat, burning and unrelenting. "You should not be here," he said. His voice was deep, smooth, but laced with warning. It was not a threat, it was prophecy. Her voice trembled. "Who are you?" He tilted his head slightly, as though her question amused him. "Who I am does not matter right now. What matters is that you stop running." Something inside her wanted to believe him. But trust was a language long forgotten. She took another step back, her heel scraping against stone. "You do not know me." The faintest smile ghosted across his lips. "Aurelia," he said, and the sound of her name in his mouth stopped her completely. The rain hissed between them. She did not remember the last time someone had said her name like that, with certainty, with recognition, with power. Her voice broke slightly. "How do you know me?" He moved closer, not a predator's advance, but deliberate, controlled, like someone fighting the pull of his own instincts. When he reached her, he did not touch her immediately. He just stood there, close enough that she could feel the cold energy radiating from his body, close enough that her own breath came out faster. Then his hand lifted slowly, carefully. He caught her wrist in his grasp. His touch was not gentle, it was firm, searching, as though confirming something he already knew. He turned her hand over, the chain still clinking faintly from her earlier escape. The faint silver light beneath her skin shimmered again, that mark that had cursed her life glowing against his palm. "They told me the Barren one would run," he murmured. His eyes darkened. "They did not tell me she would burn." For a heartbeat, she could not speak. The rain had stopped altogether now. Even the thunder seemed to have drawn back, watching from a distance. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. His gaze lifted to hers. There was nothing human in those eyes. The truth. She tried to pull away, but his hold tightened, not painfully, but with a strength that left no room for escape. His skin was cold, colder than the storm, but his touch sent a strange warmth through her veins. He leaned in slightly, voice low enough to make the air between them thrum. "You have been running from what you are. And the world is running out of time for that." Her throat went dry. She did not know what terrified her more, the idea that he knew her secret, or that he might be part of it. "You are one of them," she said. "A hunter." His lips curved faintly, but not in amusement. "No. I am worse." Lightning shattered the sky above them. In that flash of light, she saw them, the fangs glinting beneath his words, the faint shimmer of something primal lurking beneath his skin. He was not just a man. He was a vampire. Her body tensed, muscles coiling, instinct screaming to flee. But before she could take another step, something shifted behind her, the echo of boots on stone, the metallic chime of armor. She turned her head, eyes widening. Soldiers. 5 of them. bronze-plated, bearing the insignia of the Moon Court. Their blades were drawn, the scent of silver thick in the air. By decree of the High Priestess, one barked, "Surrender the witch." The vampire did not flinch. His gaze flicked over the men with quiet calculation. Then he released Aurelia's wrist and stepped forward. "You should not have come here," he said. The soldiers hesitated. They felt it too, the weight of him. Power did not always roar, sometimes it whispered, and still made you want to kneel. "Kill him," one ordered. The next few seconds blurred. The first soldier lunged. The vampire moved, faster than sight. A rush of air, a crack of bone, a scream swallowed by thunder. Aurelia's heart stuttered. The others barely had time to react before the ground shook. One moment, they were standing, the next, their weapons clattered uselessly across the stone. The storm responded to him. The wind itself bent to his will. When it was over, the rain fell again, soft, almost cleansing. For bodies lay broken among the ruins, their armor cracked, their eyes wide and lifeless. The last soldier stumbled back, fear overtaking his duty. The vampire did not chase him. He simply turned, his crimson gaze locking onto Aurelia once more. He looked untouched, unshaken. Only his eyes betrayed something deeper, a storm that had nothing to do with the weather. Aurelia backed away, voice trembling. "What are you?" He approached slowly, steps echoing through the empty forum. "Something that does not fit in your stories," he said quietly. "Something born before they began." She wanted to hate him, to fear him, but something in his tone disarmed her. There was pain beneath that calm, centuries of it. He stopped inches from her. The rain traced the outline of his jaw, gliding down his throat. He smelled like old forests and blood and the faint trace of something that did not belong in this world, hope. "Why did you save me?" she asked. He studied her face, his expression unreadable. "Because I do not believe in coincidence," he said. "And because the mark you carry should not exist." Her pulse quickened. "You talk as if you know what it means." He hesitated, eyes flickering down to her wrist again. The glow had dimmed, but it was still there, buried beneath her skin like a heartbeat. "I know enough to recognize what happens when destiny bleeds through the cracks," he murmured. "And I know that the moment you ran, something ancient woke up." Her breath hitched. "And you?" He exhaled slowly, like he had been holding something back for years. "I woke up too." They stood there in silence, the space between them charged, fragile. The rain shimmered like silver threads, connecting them even as fear tried to pull them apart. Aurelia searched his face for answers, but his gaze was guarded, careful, as if revealing too much might break something sacred. "Tell me your name," she said softly. "Kael." The word rolled through the air like a secret made of thunder. Kael. It felt ancient, heavy with the kind of history no mortal tongue could carry. Aurelia swallowed hard. "You said I should not be here." "Why?" His eyes softened, just slightly. "Because the people who want you dead are not the worst thing coming." The wind picked up again, swirling around them. He stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper now. "They will come for you again, Aurelia. And when they do, running will not save you. Hiding will not save you. Only power will." She shook her head. "You think I have not tried? It burns me when I touch it. It is not a gift, it is a curse." For the first time, his composure cracked. "That is what they told you." His hand rose again, hovering near her cheek, but he did not touch her. "Power is not good or evil. It is a mirror. It shows you who you really are." Her throat tightened. "And what if I do not like what I see?" His eyes met hers, unwavering. "Then you are not looking close enough." Something in his voice made her chest ache. It was not comfort, it was challenge. And yet, beneath all of it, beneath the danger, the confusion, there was something else building between them. A pull. Unseen. Uninvited. Unavoidable. Kael took one final step closer. The air trembled where they stood. "You are mine now," he said quietly, not as command, but as truth. "Whether you believe it or not." The words struck something deep inside her. Not ownership. Not control. Recognition. Like he was not claiming her, but reminding her of something she had forgotten. The storm broke again, louder this time, thunder rolling like applause from the heavens. Aurelia did not move. Could not. Her fear had melted into something else entirely, something dangerous and alive. For the first time in her life, she did not feel small beneath her curse. She felt seen. And though she did not know why, she knew this moment, the ruins, the rain, the man with crimson eyes, was the beginning of everything she had been running from. And maybe, just maybe, everything she was meant to become. The first light of dawn crept through the broken columns, washing the ruins in a pale, ghost-like hue. The air was heavy with mist and the faint scent of iron. Aurelia sat near what had once been a merchant's stall, her knees pulled close, the cold stone biting into her skin. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a silence so deep it felt almost sacred. Kael crouched beside her, his movements deliberate, quiet. His cloak brushed the wet ground, his presence too composed for someone who had slaughtered soldiers only hours ago. He took her arm without asking, his fingers steady as he cleaned the wound along her forearm with the edge of his sleeve. She flinched. Not from pain, from the gentleness. No one had touched her gently in years. He glanced up at her reaction. "You are safe," he said simply, his tone steady but distant, as if he did not entirely believe his own words. Aurelia's eyes drifted toward the horizon where faint streaks of gold painted the edge of the sky. Safe. The word was foreign on her tongue. She had been called many things, cursed, dangerous, barren, but never that. She looked at the man before her, the immortal predator who had appeared out of nowhere and claimed her fate as though it were written in the stars. There was something about him that both frightened and calmed her, like the eye of a storm. Her voice came out hoarse. "Why did you save me?" Kael paused, his thumb hovering above the cut. "Because I have seen what happens when the world destroys something it does not understand." His eyes caught the light, and for a moment, she saw something raw in them, a memory, maybe, or regret. She wanted to ask, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she looked down at her arm, the blood drying into dark threads across her skin. The mark beneath it still glowed faintly, that silver shimmer that had haunted her all her life. She tried to cover it with her palm, but Kael stopped her. "Do not hide it," he said quietly. She met his gaze, defiance flaring. "This mark ruined my life." He tilted his head slightly. "Or saved it." She laughed bitterly. "Saved me? I was paraded through the square like livestock. My pack turned their backs on me. My own kin spat at my feet. You call that salvation?" Kael's expression did not change, but his voice softened. "I call it survival." The words lingered in the cold air. Aurelia drew in a shaky breath. She wanted to be angry, to push him away, but his calm was disarming. He moved with the patience of someone who had lived long enough to see every version of suffering. She turned her gaze to the distant hills, where the ruins gave way to shadowed woods. Her thoughts slipped backward, into the memories she had buried deep. She had been born under the crimson moon, a night of omen, her mother once said. The pack had gathered in silence as the seer's child was brought into the world. Her mother's eyes had glowed silver, her father's were wolf gold, and the elders had whispered that no good could come from such a union. From the moment she could walk, strange things happened around her. Flames would curl around her fingers during full moons. The wolves would grow restless when she was near. Her blood shimmered faintly whenever she bled. The pack elders had called it impurity. Her mother had called it destiny. But destiny did not save her. The day the tribunal was held, she had stood in the center of the circle, her wrists bound with wolf vine. The high priestess had raised her staff, her voice echoing across the stone hall. "This child of moon and flame bears a womb that cannot bear life. the goddess has sealed it. The pack had murmured in disgust. To them, infertility was not just a curse, it was betrayal. The duty of every she-wolf was to strengthen the bloodline. And she had failed before she had even begun. Aurelia blinked, pulling herself back to the present, her throat tightening. The words of her condemnation still rang in her mind, sharp as broken glass. Kael watched her silently, his crimson eyes searching her face. "You were exiled." She nodded slowly. "They said I was too dangerous to stay. That my blood would poison the next generation if I ever mated." Kael's jaw tightened. "Fools. They fear what they cannot control." Her voice trembled. "They were not wrong to fear me." He leaned closer, the torchlight flickering over his face. "Tell me why." Her eyes filled with the reflection of the flames dancing between them. "Because I burned them." The words came out in a whisper, but they carried the weight of confession. "It was not my choice," she continued. "They were going to kill me. My power, it broke loose. Fire poured from my hands. It consumed the hall. I can still hear them screaming." Her breath hitched. She looked at her palms, trembling. "I tried to stop it. I swear I tried." Kael's hand closed gently over hers, steadying her shaking fingers. "You survived something no one else would have. That is not weakness." Aurelia met his gaze, her voice cracking. "It is guilt." He said nothing for a long moment. Then, quietly, "You carry your guilt like armor. But it is eating you alive." The silence that followed was heavy, thick with the weight of things left unsaid. The light shifted again as the sun climbed higher, revealing more of the broken ruins around them, remnants of marble statues, fallen altars, the faint outline of where the market once stood. Once, this had been a place of life, laughter, barter. Now it was nothing but ghosts and ash. Aurelia's eyes traced the cracked mosaics at her feet, depictions of gods and beasts intertwined, the same symbols she had seen etched into her nightmares. "This place feels familiar," she murmured. Kael followed her gaze. "It should. Your ancestors were worshipped here once." She turned sharply toward him. "What are you talking about?" "The bloodline of the flame-bearer," he said slowly. "The first wolves who carried moonfire in their veins. You are their descendant." Her heart stuttered. "That is a myth." Kael's expression darkened. "Every myth begins with truth." He rose, walking toward one of the shattered columns. His fingers brushed across an ancient carving, the faint etching of a wolf surrounded by a halo of fire. "This was your family's crest before your kind forgot what they were." Aurelia's breath quickened. She stood, her body tense. "If that is true, then why would they cast me out?" "Because power frightens even those born to wield it." He turned to face her. "They call you Barren, but they are wrong. The goddess did not curse your womb. She protected it." Her eyes widened. "Protected? From what?" Kael's gaze deepened, his tone dropping to a near whisper. "From the ones who would use it to resurrect what should remain buried." A chill ran down her spine. "What are you saying?" "There are those among your kind who believe that your blood, the blood of the flame-bearer, can awaken the ancient gods of war. That is why they hunted you. That is why they called you cursed. Not because you could not bear life, but because your life itself could unmake them." Aurelia's breath caught. Everything she thought she knew twisted inside out. Her exile, her shame, her pain, all of it built on lies. Kael stepped closer, his eyes glowing faintly in the light of dawn. "The truth was never about fertility. It was about fear." Her chest ached. Her throat burned with unspoken rage and heartbreak. She had lived her entire life under the weight of false sin. Her voice shook. "Then what am I now?" He looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, "You are what the goddess made you, a weapon the world tried to bury." Tears welled in her eyes. "I never asked for this." "Neither did I," he said. Aurelia looked up, confusion softening her grief. Kael's expression was distant now, almost hollow. Once, I loved a woman like you. She burned with the same fire. The gods feared her, too. They took her from me. Aurelia felt the air shift. Beneath his composure, there was pain. Centuries old, sealed beneath the weight of eternity. Is that why you saved me? She whispered. Because I remind you of her? His eyes lifted to meet hers, and for a heartbeat, the silence between them was almost unbearable. No, he said finally. I saved you because I will not watch another flame die in the dark. The words pierced through her, fragile and raw. The sun was higher now, the light brushing across the scars on her arms, revealing each mark like a story carved into her skin. Aurelia exhaled shakily. I have been running from who I am for so long, I do not even know where the real part of me begins anymore. Kael's voice was calm, almost gentle. Then stop running. Her gaze flicked to him. You make it sound easy. He shook his head slowly. It is never easy. But power only bows to those who stop fearing it. Aurelia looked down at her hands again. The faint shimmer beneath her skin pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. It did not feel like a curse anymore, it felt alive, waiting. She lifted her eyes to Kael. What if I cannot control it? Then I will stand beside you until you can. The words sank deep, heavy and grounding. She believed him, and that terrified her most of all. A soft wind stirred, carrying the scent of pine and rain through the ruins. The torches had burned low, leaving only smoke curling upward into the pale morning. Aurelia closed her eyes, breathing in the quiet. For the first time in years, she felt something inside her loosen. A thread of fear, unraveling into something else. Hope. When she opened her eyes again, Kael was still watching her, unreadable. The silence between them was no longer heavy. It was full. And somewhere deep in her chest, beneath the scars, beneath the sorrow, something ancient stirred, as if her blood had finally remembered its purpose. The tunnels stretched endlessly beneath the old city, carved stone veins carrying whispers from centuries that had long forgotten sunlight. The air hung heavy with incense and rot, the scent of earth and echoes. Aurelia followed close behind Kael, her bare feet brushing over fragments of broken marble mosaics that once depicted gods now erased by time. Her pulse matched the rhythm of the torches flickering along the corridor walls, each flame bending as if drawn to her. Kael moved like shadow given breath. His cloak dragged lightly across the floor, and every step he took stirred memories she didn't recognize. Symbols carved into the catacomb walls shimmered faintly when she passed them, responding not to him but to her. What is this place? She asked quietly. Kael didn't turn. A graveyard for gods. A sanctuary for what the world tried to bury. She frowned. And you think I belong here? He stopped then, his head tilting slightly, the torchlight catching the sharp line of his jaw. You don't belong here, he said softly. But you were born for it. His words unsettled her more than the crypt's chill. Every stone seemed to hum with unseen energy, and as they walked deeper, she began to feel it, something vast and old stirring in her blood, pulsing with quiet recognition. The corridor opened into a vast chamber. Pillars rose like petrified trees, their roots entwined with relics and ancient offerings. In the center stood an altar made of moonstone, smooth and cold, engraved with runes that pulsed faintly in silver light. Kael approached it with reverence. This, he said, his voice low and deliberate, is where the prophecy was sealed. Aurelia's breath caught. Prophecy? He turned toward her, eyes glinting with crimson fire. The barren flame, he murmured. The legend of a woman who could not bear life, yet carried the fire to awaken it. She shook her head. That's just another story the priests used to shame me. No, he said quietly. It was never meant as punishment. It was warning and promise. Aurelia's heartbeat quickened. Her mark, the faint silver flame on her neck, began to glow brighter. She touched it, but the heat burned beneath her skin. The altar responded. The carvings lit up like veins of light, spreading through the stone walls until the whole chamber breathed with a ghostly silver radiance. A soft hum filled the air, rising to a voice that was neither male nor female, ancient, sorrowful, and commanding. "Child of the flame," it said, echoing through her mind. "The fire in your veins is not of birth. It is of resurrection." Aurelia's knees buckled. Kael caught her before she fell, his hands firm on her shoulders. Energy crackled between them, raw and magnetic. She gasped, unable to pull away, her body trembling as visions consumed her. She saw cities burning beneath scarlet skies. Wolves howling on mountaintops drenched in moonlight. Oceans turning silver as the moon wept blood. And above it all, her own face, crowned with fire. She tore herself free from the vision, clutching at Kael's cloak. "I'm no savior," she whispered. "Whatever they told you, it's a lie." Kael studied her, eyes deep as storms. "Lies don't make the stars move," he said. "And they moved the night you were born." Her mind rebelled against it, but her body betrayed her. The mark on her neck throbbed with every beat of her heart. Flames whispered beneath her skin, begging to be released. "What if I destroy everything?" she asked. Kael's gaze softened. "Then I will burn beside you." The words hit her harder than she expected. His tone wasn't poetic, it was a vow. The chamber trembled, dust falling from the vaulted ceiling. The moonstone altar cracked, light spilling through its veins. Kael pulled her back just as the floor split open, revealing a pool of molten silver beneath. It pulsed like a heartbeat, slow and heavy. "What is that?" she breathed. "The heart of the prophecy," Kael said. "The flame of the goddess herself. It's been waiting for you." Aurelia stepped closer despite herself. The heat licked at her skin, but it didn't burn, it called to her. In its reflection, she saw not the frightened fugitive she had been, but something else. Someone else. Her mother's voice echoed in memory, a whisper she hadn't heard since childhood. "When the world forgets its gods, one will rise who carries no child, yet bears all life." Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't want this," she said. "I just wanted peace." Kael stepped beside her, his presence steady, his expression unreadable. "Peace was never written in your stars, Aurelia. But purpose was." Lightning flashed through the cracks in the ceiling, thunder rolling above the earth. The molten pool stirred, and a form began to rise within it, a silhouette of fire shaped like a woman. Her face was featureless, her hands outstretched. "Your time has come," the voice intoned. Aurelia's heart pounded. She stepped forward until the fire brushed her fingertips. Pain surged through her, but behind it came clarity, every moment of rejection, exile, and shame woven into one radiant thread. She understood then that her so-called curse had never been absence, it was potential waiting to ignite. Kael reached out, his fingers brushing hers, grounding her through the storm of light. "Let it happen," he murmured. "Don't fight it." The fire consumed her. But she didn't scream. She lifted her head, eyes glowing with the same molten silver as the pool beneath her. The light filled the chamber, spilling into the tunnels and beyond, touching forgotten altars across the buried city. Statues cracked open. Old symbols flared to life. Kael watched her transformation with quiet awe. The air vibrated around her like a heartbeat. She hovered at the edge between woman and divinity, her body radiating power that felt both devastating and pure. When the light finally dimmed, she collapsed again into his arms. Her breathing was shallow, but steady. The mark on her neck had changed, no longer a faint scar, but a living flame that pulsed softly under her skin. Kael brushed a lock of hair from her face. "Now do you see?" he whispered. Tears streaked her cheeks. "I see what I never wanted to believe," she said. "That I was meant for something I don't understand." "Understanding comes later," he said. "For now, you just have to live long enough to fulfill it." Outside, dawn had broken. The ruins above them glowed with pale gold light filtering through the cracks. For the first time, the world seemed to hold its breath. Aurelia closed her eyes. The fire inside her no longer frightened her, it frightened the world instead. Somewhere far above, the wolves began to howl. The forest rose like a black ocean at the edge of the crumbling ruins, its branches reaching for the moon as if to tear it from the sky. Wind swept through the hollow arches of ancient Rome, carrying the metallic scent of rain and something darker, blood waiting to be spilled. Kael stood still, every sense sharpened to a blade. Beside him, Aurelia's breathing was quick and uneven, the remnants of fire still glimmering faintly beneath her skin. The night felt alive, restless, aware. Somewhere deep within the trees, something stirred. Wolves howled, not in unity, but in warning. "They found us," Kael murmured, his tone edged with calm that didn't reach his eyes. Aurelia turned toward him, her fingers trembling. "Who?" He looked at her for only a second before unsheathing the ancient blade strapped across his back. "Everyone." From the shadows beyond the ruins came the first flicker of movement, figures cloaked in silver-threaded armor, their eyes burning with hatred older than memory. They were shifters, alphas from rival packs, their forms shifting even as they ran, fur bursting through skin, bones snapping and reforming with each breath. Behind them, the faint hum of incantations filled the air as the Vampire Council's hunters approached, their weapons glowing with the light of forged moonstone. The world was converging upon one secret. Kael moved in front of Aurelia. "Stay behind me." But the command cracked against her chest like a curse. She wasn't meant to hide anymore. Still, the sight before her froze her breath. Wolves, sleek and massive, darted through the fog with eyes the color of winter storms. Every one of them was focused on her, the flame-born, the cursed one, the woman who could end or begin empires. Kael stepped forward. His presence alone seemed to warp the air. "If you value your lives," he called out, his voice carrying through the rain, "turn back." A low growl rumbled through the ranks. One of the rival alphas, a beast with fur blacker than midnight, stepped into view. His human form followed, tall, scarred, eyes filled with fury. "You dare protect her?" he spat. "She is forbidden." "She is mine," Kael said simply. The declaration hit the night like thunder. For a heartbeat, silence held. Then the world broke open. Arrows of pure moonlight streaked through the dark. Kael moved faster than mortal eyes could follow, catching one midair before it struck Aurelia. Another grazed his shoulder, leaving a searing wound that hissed against his skin. The scent of his blood filled the air, ancient and intoxicating. Aurelia gasped. "Kael." He turned, eyes blazing crimson. "Run." But she couldn't. The fear that gripped her wasn't the kind that sent one fleeing, it was the kind that demanded she stand and face the storm. The earth trembled beneath her feet, as if recognizing her choice. The fire within her, that untamed, half-sleeping power, surged up like a breaking tide. One of the wolves leaped at her, claws outstretched, fangs gleaming in the rainlight. She threw out her hand instinctively. A wall of silver fire burst from her palm, slicing through the air, consuming the creature mid-leap. The forest lit up in flashes of brilliance. For a moment everything froze. The enemies, the trees, even the wind. Then the body fell, charred and smoking. Aurelia stared at her hands, horror flooding her chest. "I didn't mean to." Kael was already beside her, his voice low but fierce. "You were never meant to hide what you are." The fire dimmed, but the damage was done. Every eye in the clearing turned toward her, filled with awe and terror. "She's no savior," someone shouted from the darkness. "She's the ruin." The hunters began chanting, their words slicing through the air like knives. Chains forged from moonlight materialized in their hands, writhing like serpents. They flung them toward her. Kael intercepted, catching one around his arm, the silver burning his flesh as he pulled hard enough to shatter it. Another chain coiled around his waist. He roared, the sound shaking the trees. His fangs flashed, his power erupting like a storm unleashed. Aurelia's heart clenched. "Stop, you'll kill yourself." "Better me than them," he growled through gritted teeth. The ground split beneath their feet. From within the crack, light erupted again, her power, unrestrained now, lashing out in waves that tore through the ruins. Stone cracked, statues fell, and the earth wept molten silver. The attackers stumbled back, shielding their eyes. And then came the voice. It wasn't human. It wasn't even alive. It came from everywhere, the sky, the forest, the depths of the broken city. It rolled through the air like thunder made of judgment. A barren one cannot lead, the voice boomed. She will doom us all. Aurelia froze. She knew that voice. It belonged to the high priestess of the moon court, the same woman who had marked her as cursed years ago. The same woman who had condemned her to exile. Her body went cold. Through the crackling flames and the storm of ash, she saw her, the high priestess, standing atop the ridge. Cloaked in silver robes, her eyes gleamed with cruel light. Surrender her, Kael, the priestess commanded. Before her fire consumes what remains of this world. Kael lifted his head, his voice raw with fury. If the world burns for her, then let it burn. The priestess raised her hand. Moonlight gathered at her fingertips, forming a spear of energy that whistled through the air toward Aurelia. Kael moved before she could think. The spear struck his chest. The sound it made wasn't that of metal piercing flesh, it was deeper, the shattering of something immortal. Kael fell to one knee, eyes wide with disbelief, crimson seeping through his shirt. Aurelia's scream tore through the forest. Fire burst from her, uncontrolled, desperate. The flames turned the rain to steam, the night to day. The rival alphas stumbled back, covering their faces, as trees caught fire and the ruins themselves began to melt. Kael reached for her, his hand trembling. Don't let them take you, he whispered. Tears streamed down her face. I won't leave you. You have to, he rasped, blood staining his lips. They'll use you. They'll twist your gift. Don't let them. But she couldn't move. She could barely breathe. The fire inside her was a storm now, wild and unbound, feeding on her grief. Every heartbeat sent another surge through the air, each one stronger than the last. The high priestess watched from the ridge, her expression unreadable. She's not the savior, she said softly. She's the reckoning. Lightning split the sky. The hunters fell back, retreating into shadow as the flames devoured the battlefield. Aurelia fell to her knees beside Kael. His hand was still warm, his pulse faint but present. She pressed her forehead to his, whispering words that burned in her throat. Don't die on me. Please. He managed a weak smile. Not yet, he said. Not until I see what you become. The wind rose again, carrying the scent of smoke and silver. The high priestess vanished into the storm, her words lingering like a curse. When silence finally returned, Aurelia's fire dimmed to embers. She cradled Kael in her arms, surrounded by the ruin she had made, the ashes of men and beasts scattered like offerings to a god she never asked to serve. In that moment, she understood something terrible and true. The world was no longer fighting her. It was afraid of her. And it would not stop until she was either its salvation, or its end. The cape breathed softly around them, a hollow heartbeat echoing through its ancient bones. Rain had become mist outside, a curtain of silver smoke drifting across the entrance. The air was heavy with silence, the kind that carried unspoken words, trembling just at the edge of confession. The moss on the walls glowed faintly, soft green light spilling across their faces, painting Aurelia and Kael in hues of otherworldly quiet. Aurelia sat near the shallow pool at the center, her reflection broken by ripples. The water was cold, but her skin still burned, not from her fire this time, but from the memory of his hand against her cheek, his blood staining her fingers. She had healed him as best she could, her flame tempered to a whisper, but she could still feel the pulse of his pain inside her own chest. It tied them together, an invisible thread that neither of them had chosen but neither could escape. Kael sat across from her, half in shadow. His shirt hung open, torn from battle, revealing scars that spoke of centuries, faint lines, some healed smooth, others jagged like lightning frozen in flesh. His eyes glowed dimly, reflecting the moss light, crimson fading to gold. He looked less like a king now, and more like something weary, almost human. "You think I saved you," he said at last, voice low, rough from exhaustion. "But you saved me." Aurelia's gaze lifted slowly, uncertain whether to believe him. "I don't even understand what I've done." His smile was faint, almost sorrowful. "Centuries ago, I lost my mate. She too carried a curse." The words struck her like cold wind. She didn't move, but she felt something twist deep inside her. Jealousy? Fear? No, it was something else. Recognition. The ache of loss, familiar even when it wasn't hers. "And you think I'm her?" she asked softly. Kael's eyes met hers, unwavering. No, he leaned forward slightly, shadows shifting across his face. "You're something far more dangerous." Her pulse quickened. "Dangerous?" He nodded. "You make me want to believe again." The cave seemed to draw closer with his words. The air thickened, charged with something tender and sharp all at once. Aurelia's breath caught in her throat, her chest tight with emotions she couldn't name. For so long she'd been called cursed, unworthy, unwanted. Yet here he was, looking at her as though she was the only truth that still mattered. "You shouldn't," she whispered. "Belief only brings pain." He tilted his head slightly. "Then maybe pain is what I've been waiting for." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was alive. A hum filled the air between them, not of magic this time, but something older, more human. Longing. Kael rose and crossed the small space between them. His steps were quiet, measured, but each one made her heartbeat stutter. He knelt beside her, the heat from his body brushing against her skin. His hand hesitated before touching her wrist, the place where her mark pulsed faintly beneath the skin. "Do you feel that?" he asked. She nodded. "It burns." "It's the bond." Her eyes flickered up to his. "Bond?" He held her gaze, voice soft but unrelenting. "The flame recognizes its keeper." For a moment she forgot to breathe. The world outside disappeared, no prophecy, no priestess, no hunters, just him and the unbearable closeness of his voice. "I see you," he said quietly. "All of you." Her lips parted, but no words came. It wasn't what he said that undid her, it was how he said it. As if he had seen every scar she tried to hide and still found beauty in the breaking. He leaned closer. She felt his breath, warm against her skin, carrying the faint scent of smoke and iron. Her body tensed, every instinct screaming to retreat, yet she couldn't move. The fire in her veins pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. When his hand brushed her jaw, the world tilted. Her thoughts scattered like embers. The space between them shrank until their foreheads nearly touched. "You shouldn't," she murmured again, her voice trembling. His eyes searched hers. "Tell me to stop." But she couldn't. The words wouldn't come. Instead, she reached for him, her hand finding his chest, resting over the scar from the priestess's spear. His heart beat beneath her palm, steady, defiant, alive. The air grew heavy, humming with the forbidden. She could almost taste the electricity between them. His lips hovered a breath away from hers, and for one impossible moment, time forgot itself. Then the wind outside shifted. A low, mournful howl rolled through the night, echoing down the cave's narrow throat. The sound wasn't natural, it carried warning, a reminder of what lay beyond desire. Kael froze. The spell broke. The light from the moss flickered, dimmed. He drew back slowly, his hand slipping from her face. Aurelia blinked, dazed, heart pounding. The warmth of his nearness faded, leaving a hollow ache in its wake. "The bond can't complete," he said, his voice quieter now, almost pained. "Not until the blood moon rises." Her chest tightened. "The prophecy," she whispered. He nodded. "It forbids it. If we defy it, the fire will turn on you." She looked down, her fingers curling into her palms. "So even fate wants us apart." Kael turned away, staring at the glowing water. Fate is not as cruel as men, he said. But it knows what it wants. And it doesn't care what it breaks to get there. The words lingered, heavy with something neither of them dared name. Aurelia drew her knees closer, her body trembling though the air was warm. What if I don't want to wait for fate, she said. He didn't answer immediately. When he did, his tone was soft, almost reverent. Then you'll have to trust me. She lifted her eyes. Trust you? You kidnapped me. You fought them for me. You bled for me. I don't even know why. Kael looked over his shoulder. Because the first time I saw you, I remembered what it meant to be alive. Her throat tightened. There was truth in his voice, the kind that leaves no room for doubt. But truth could also destroy. She looked away. Every time someone has said they believed in me, they ended up burned. Then let me burn, he said. The cave seemed to breathe again, a slow rhythm that matched their silence. She stared into the water, her reflection fractured by the faint ripples. You don't understand what I am. Then tell me. I'm the end of everything. Kael moved closer, his voice a whisper. Or the beginning. Their eyes met again, and something inside her broke open. For so long, she had held the weight of her curse alone, the whispers, the fear, the exile. But in his gaze, she saw none of that. Only recognition. Why are you doing this? She asked. He smiled faintly. Because somewhere between my curse and yours, I think there's something worth saving. The fire in her heart trembled, not with fury, but with something fragile. Hope. He reached out once more, fingertips brushing her hair back from her face. His touch was gentle, reverent. It wasn't hunger, it was prayer. Trust me, he said again. Or leave. The words hung between them like a blade. Aurelia's breath shuddered. Leaving would mean safety. Distance. Control. Yet the thought of walking away twisted something deep within her. She had spent her entire life running, from her gift, from her past, from the pain of being unwanted. But here, in the dark with him, she didn't feel like a curse. She felt seen. She rose slowly, stepping toward him until the faint light traced the curve of her face. If I stay, she said softly, and you're wrong about me, what then? Kael looked up at her, his eyes steady. Then I'll fall with you. The words struck deep, cutting through the layers of fear that had long defined her. She searched his face for deceit and found none. Finally, she exhaled, long and unsteady. Then you'd better not let go. He didn't smile. He simply nodded once, slow and solemn, as though sealing a vow older than both their curses. Outside, the mist thickened, muffling the distant sounds of pursuit. Inside, the fire of destiny burned low but steady. For the first time since the ruins, the silence between them didn't feel like distance. It felt like promise. The air still smells of blood and smoke. Night presses down over the shattered courtyard, heavy as guilt. The ruins hum with the echo of Aurelia's scream, the sound that tore through worlds and silenced gods. Kael lies chained in silver, his body scorched by her flame, his heart still bound to her even in her absence. He can taste her power in the air, the faint sweetness of burnt moonlight, the tang of sorrow sharper than iron. Every breath feels like punishment. He remembers her eyes before the fire rose, the raw ache in them when she realized what betrayal looked like on his face. It wasn't trust breaking, it was belief dying. She hadn't meant to destroy everything. She only wanted to protect what little of her soul still belonged to hope. Yet, the moment her fire touched the altar, the prophecy rewrote itself. Her destiny was no longer resurrection, it was vengeance. Kael stares at the horizon, where the moon hides behind clouds. You're not gone, he murmurs, the words dragging from his throat like broken glass. You can't be. His voice shakes, not from fear, but from knowing. The bond between them, forbidden and eternal, still hums beneath his skin. Miles away, Aurelia wakes in a wasteland of ash. The air is silent. No wolves howl, no wind moves. Her power burned everything, the court, the chains, the believers, the blasphemers. She stands amid ruin, trembling, her veins still glowing faintly with silver fire. Every heartbeat feels like thunder. Every breath feels like a confession. She remembers Kael's voice, not the words, but the tone. The way it trembled when he said her name. The way his eyes pleaded, not for mercy, but for her to stop. And she couldn't. Because the moment she saw the priestess raise that blade toward him, her fire answered before her mind could think. She drops to her knees, fingers digging into the ashes of what used to be her fate. You believed in me, she whispers, tears falling into the soot. And I destroyed you for it. The wind stirs. Something ancient moves within it, a whisper that sounds like her mother's voice, the seer who died to protect her secret. The flame does not choose peace, the wind says. It chooses truth. Aurelia lifts her head. The horizon flickers, distant torches, shadows moving. The survivors are hunting her. The prophecy, now twisted and feared, paints her as the harbinger of ruin. The moon court may be gone, but its followers will not stop until she's buried under her own legend. She begins to walk. Her bare feet leave faint traces of silver light on the ground. The fire inside her no longer feels like a gift, it feels like a cage. Every step burns, every breath cuts deeper. But beneath it all, something else stirs, the faint pulse of a bond still alive. Kael. In the ruins of the moon court, Kael claws at his chains until his wrists bleed. The silver bites into his skin, hissing against his veins. The council's hunters circle him, whispering curses, debating whether to kill the last of the vampire kings. He looks at them, eyes hollow but fierce. If she lives, he says, voice barely above a whisper, the world still has a chance. One of the hunters laughs. The world doesn't need a cursed shifter and her fallen lover. Kael's lips curve in something between pain and defiance. It doesn't need your permission, either. That night, he rips his hands free, skin melting against silver. He doesn't scream. The pain is nothing compared to the emptiness she left behind. He disappears into the darkness, following the scent of her fire, faint but alive. Aurelia reaches the edge of the old empire by dawn. Her reflection in a pool of rainwater startles her, eyes too bright, veins glowing faintly like molten glass. She's not entirely human anymore. Not entirely wolf. Not entirely anything that belongs to the world she once knew. Her memories blur between life and dream, the tribunal's judgment, Kael's voice in the cavern, the kiss that almost was, the fire that ended everything. She presses her hand to her chest, feeling the echo of their almost bond pulsing faintly beneath her skin. I'll find you, she murmurs. Even if the gods themselves burn for it. Her voice is steady now, her grief tempered into resolve. The betrayal still haunts her, but it no longer defines her. The prophecy was never about saving a kingdom. It was about awakening something greater, a power that refused to die, even when the world turned against it. The land begins to shift around her as she walks. Trees bending subtly toward her, ancient stones humming softly beneath her steps. The world recognizes her now. The barren flame has risen. Kael finds her trail at the border of the Forgotten Lands. The earth is marked by silver scorch lines, the air heavy with the scent of her sorrow. Every instinct in him screams to turn back, to let her go before her power consumes him too. But love is not a choice anymore, it's a compulsion written in blood and fire. When he finally finds her, she's standing at the mouth of an ancient temple, the one built for the gods who died when the moon turned red. Her back is to him, hair tangled by the wind, cloak tattered. She doesn't turn when he speaks. You should have killed me, she says softly. I couldn't, Kael replies. You were already killing me in every other way. She closes her eyes. They called me cursed. They were right, he says, voice rough. You're cursed with too much heart. For a long time, there's silence. Then she turns, slowly, eyes shimmering like molten silver. You don't understand, Kael. I saw it, in the vision. My fire consumes you. He steps closer, ignoring the pain as her aura sears the air. Then let it. Better to burn with you than live in a world without you. The bond between them ignites, invisible but violent. The air trembles. Their hands almost touch, and the world seems to tilt. Memories flood them both, the prophecy, the betrayal, the truth hidden beneath it all. The goddess didn't curse Aurelia. She transformed her, made her the spark that would destroy the old order and birth the new. Kael's voice breaks the silence. The fire isn't meant to destroy. It's meant to reveal. Aurelia's lips tremble. Then why does it hurt so much? Because rebirth always does. She steps closer. The distance between them disappears. For a heartbeat, everything stills, the wind, the stars, even time itself. Then their lips meet, and the fire finally accepts its purpose. It doesn't destroy him. It heals him. The silver in her veins turns gold. The scars on his chest vanish. The prophecy reweaves itself, no longer about ruin or resurrection, but union. When they pull apart, dawn has broken. The first light spills over the ruins, bathing them both in warmth that feels like forgiveness. The ghosts of the moon court fade with the morning mist. Aurelia looks at him, eyes softer now. What happens next? Kael smiles faintly. The world will come for us again. Then let it, she replies. This time, we'll burn together. Their hands entwine. Behind them, the temple doors crack open, light spilling out, ancient, pure, unending. The gods that once condemned them now watch in silence, their judgment replaced with awe. The prophecy is fulfilled, but its true meaning remains whispered, that love, even cursed, even broken, can still rewrite destiny. The sky splits open. Thunder rolls across the dying empire as if the heavens themselves are bearing witness. The air burns with silver flame, alive with something primal, something divine. From the ruins, Aurelia rises, her body no longer trembling, her heart no longer begging to belong. Every wound she ever carried has turned to light. Every curse whispered against her name now bends to her command. The priestess who once condemned her crawls backward through the rubble, eyes wide with terror. Around her, wolves collapse to their knees, their eyes lowered, their throats bared in instinctive submission. The vampires follow, their crimson irises dimming under the weight of her glow. The night, once owned by monsters, now belongs to her. Kael watches, breath stolen. His heart beats unevenly, torn between reverence and awe. The woman who once feared her own reflection now stands as the axis of creation and ruin. Her hair glows like a crown of light, her skin etched in moving veins of molten silver. The ground hums beneath her bare feet. Every step she takes ripples through the world, the mark of the prophecy not fulfilled but transcended. She looks to the priestess, her voice a calm storm. You called me Barren. Her hand lifts, and the flames respond, swirling around her like a living entity, shimmering with emotion, with fury, with purpose. But my fire births nations. The priestess trembles, her lips moving but no words form. The arrogance that once shaped her face has vanished, replaced by a terror that tastes like truth. For centuries, she believed power meant purity, that worth was tied to what the body could give. But Aurelia stands as proof that creation is not limited to womb or lineage. She births new worlds from will alone. Kael steps forward, the last of his chains breaking with a metallic shriek. His skin smolders where the silver touched him, but he doesn't flinch. Aurelia, he whispers, and the sound of her name on his lips feels like a prayer. Her gaze meets his. The power in her eyes could end him, could unmake everything they are, but instead, it softens. You should not have followed me. You didn't ask me to, he answers, voice hoarse. That's why I did. The air tightens between them. Every breath is charged. Every heartbeat echoes like a drum. She can feel his strength, his loyalty, but she no longer clings to it as her anchor. She is no longer the woman who needed someone to believe in her. She has become belief itself. A tremor shakes the ground. The temple doors burst open behind them, and from the depths rises a presence older than time, the forgotten god of shadows, the one who fed off every ounce of shame, every broken vow, every curse whispered under the moon. His form is smoke and bone, endless eyes opening across his face like fractures in reality. The darkness spreads outward, devouring the light of the moon. Aurelia turns toward him, her power steady, her pulse unhurried. "You've hidden in guilt and pain long enough," she says. "Feeding on the weak. Binding women in silence. You mistake obedience for reverence." The god's voice rumbles, low and distorted. "You were meant to be my vessel. You were meant to serve." Aurelia steps forward, each word cutting through the night. "I am not your vessel." Her flame arcs around her, coiling into the shape of wings. "And I am not your sacrifice." The god roars. The sky cracks. Rivers of shadow pour toward her, twisting through the air like living serpents. The ruins quake under the pressure of divine rage. Kael moves to stand beside her, but she lifts a hand, not in dismissal, but in assurance. "This is mine." He freezes, watching her walk into the storm. The fire that trails behind her burns brighter than the sun, illuminating every piece of broken history. The god strikes, his shadows wrapping around her body like chains, but the moment they touch her, they ignite. Her fire devours the darkness, transforming it into light. The god screams. The air fractures. The flames surge higher, fueled not by anger but by truth. Aurelia closes her eyes, feeling every heartbeat of the world, every soul crushed under centuries of control, every woman silenced by fear. She channels them, not as victims, but as voices rising through her veins. Her body becomes the vessel of their collective will. Every flame whispers a story. Every spark carries memory. The god falters, realizing too late that he's not fighting one woman, he's fighting the force of every silenced generation. Kael watches, his heart pounding. The sight before him is both terrible and holy. Aurelia is blinding, her power not wild anymore, but sovereign. For the first time, he understands the prophecy not as fate, but as choice. She wasn't chosen by the flame. She chose it. The god lunges again, his shadow arms cutting through the air. Aurelia raises both hands, her voice ringing through the storm. No more chains. No more silence. No more gods. The explosion of light that follows swallows the sky. The world holds its breath. Mountains crumble, seas part, the moon turns white. When the light fades, the god is gone, reduced to dust, scattered by the same fire that once bowed to him. Silence returns, vast and trembling. The ruins glow faintly, silver embers floating in the air like spirits freed from torment. Aurelia stands at the center, eyes closed, chest rising and falling. Her flames have dimmed now, no longer consuming, only warming. Kael approaches slowly. His steps echo in the hollow quiet. "You did it," he murmurs. She opens her eyes, and they are no longer the molten silver of wrath, they are soft, human, luminous with peace. "No," she says. "We did." He smiles faintly. "You didn't need me." "I always did," she replies. "Just not to save me, to remind me what it feels like to be seen." The wind moves through the ruins, gentle now. The wolves begin to rise, shaking off fear, eyes gleaming with reverence. The vampires lower their weapons. The priestess, weeping, presses her forehead to the ground. Aurelia turns toward the crowd. "You followed gods who demanded sacrifice," she says. "You built empires on fear. But power that feeds on suffering will always turn hollow. The world doesn't need worship, it needs awakening." The wolves howl, not in submission, but in unity. The sound rolls across the plains, rising into the fading night. The moon glows brighter, cleansed of its blood-red hue. Kael steps beside her. The air between them hums again, not with forbidden desire, but with balance. "What happens now?" he asks. She looks toward the horizon, where dawn begins to break. "Now," she says, "we build what they tried to burn." He takes her hand. The touch is grounding, human, and yet boundless. Her flame flickers through his skin, merging with the shadow that once defined him. Fire and night, no longer at war. As they walk through the ruins, the earth shifts under their feet, not crumbling, but blooming. The scorched stones sprout wildflowers, their petals shimmering silver. The world, once wounded by prophecy, begins to heal under her steps. Aurelia glances at the sky, at the fading stars. She thinks of her mother, of the priestess, of every name once spoken in shame. Her voice breaks the quiet, soft but certain. I am not their curse, she says. I am their continuation. Kael squeezes her hand. And I am your witness. The world exhales. The fire within her steadies, no longer hungry, no longer raging. It has found its purpose, to illuminate, not consume. Far above, the moon settles into calm silver light, watching the two figures walk into the dawn, the Flameborn and the fallen king, bound not by destiny, but by choice. For the first time in centuries, the world does not tremble. It breathes. And in that breath, Aurelia feels it, not divinity, not burden, but freedom. The dawn bleeds slowly across the horizon, pale light spreading over the ruins like the first breath after death. Smoke rises from what remains of the temple. Broken stone, shattered idols, and the faint shimmer of silver ash drifting through the air. The scent of rain lingers, mixing with the quiet hum of rebirth. The world has stopped burning, but the echo of its fire still trembles in the bones of everything left standing. Aurelia stands at the edge of what once was sacred. Her bare feet press into the warm earth, and for the first time, she feels the pulse beneath it, alive, steady, free. Her flame has quieted now, reduced to a soft glow tracing along her skin. It no longer screams. It hums. It no longer devours. It breathes. Kael stands beside her, his cloak torn, his body marked by the fight they barely survived. His gaze lingers on her profile, the curve of her jaw, the stillness in her eyes. There is no triumph there, no pride, only the quiet ache of someone who has seen too much, lost too much, and still chooses to stay standing. The silence between them isn't empty, it's full. Full of every unspoken word, every heartbeat that almost broke, every truth they didn't know how to name. The kind of silence that holds meaning heavier than speech. Aurelia finally speaks, her voice a whisper. Do you think they'll remember what we did? Kael doesn't answer immediately. His eyes move to the horizon, to the faint golden line that separates night from morning. They'll remember, he says. But not all will understand. Her lips curve in a faint, weary smile. They never did. She looks down at her hands. The same hands that once trembled in chains, that once ignited whole cities. Now they're still. Ordinary, almost. I didn't want to become a myth, she murmurs. I just wanted to stop running. Kael turns toward her, his gaze soft but unyielding. You didn't become a myth, he says. You became truth. She meets his eyes. The weight in his voice presses against the hollow space in her chest where fear used to live. And what does truth become, once it's known, she asks. He hesitates, then says, it becomes choice. The words hang between them, trembling like the last flame in the wind. Choice. That's what it's always been, not destiny, not curse, but choice. And she had chosen to burn. She had chosen to rise. She had chosen to live. But now, the world watches her differently. She can feel it, in the hush of the forest beyond the ruins, in the faint rustle of wolves that keep their distance, in the weight of eyes unseen. The balance has shifted. She is not hunted anymore, but neither is she entirely free. Power draws attention. Hope demands something in return. Kael moves closer, his shadow falling across her light. The world will come for you again, he says quietly. Not to kill you this time, to claim you. Her expression hardens. Let them try. He studies her for a long moment. You're not afraid anymore. I am, she admits. But fear isn't the same as weakness. It reminds me I'm still human. something inside him softens. That old part of him that believed monsters couldn't love. He reaches for her hand, and she doesn't pull away. Their fingers intertwine, skin against skin, flame against shadow. It's not a bond born of prophecy anymore, it's something fragile, real, chosen. The light of dawn touches her hair, and Kael can see the faintest trace of silver still pulsing at her throat, the mark that once defined her, now just a reminder of where she began. The wind shifts. Voices whisper through the ruins, old as time. Would you have feared her too? It asks. Or would you have stood beside the woman who burned the gods to free her soul? The question hangs in the air, threading through the silence, wrapping around the listener's heart. Kael looks at her, and for a moment, she sees the reflection of her flame in his eyes. If the world fears you, he says softly, then let them. But if it chooses to follow, make sure it's because they understand, not because they bow. Her lips part, but she doesn't answer. She can't. Because she knows the truth, this peace is only a pause. The gods may have fallen, but power never truly dies. It only changes hands. She tilts her head toward the rising sun. When it starts again, she says, when the next storm comes, will you stand with me? He doesn't hesitate. I already am. The light glints across their joined hands. For a heartbeat, everything feels eternal, the ruins, the wind, the faint hum of the earth rebuilding itself. Then, like the last sigh of a dying ember, the scene begins to fade. But before it disappears, her voice echoes once more, quiet, vulnerable, unguarded. I wasn't meant to be loved, she whispers. But maybe I was meant to be remembered. And then the question returns, not from her lips, but from somewhere deeper, a whisper threading through the heart of anyone listening. Would you have feared her too? Would you have called her cursed, broken, dangerous? Or would you have stood beside her, the woman who burned gods, defied destiny, and rewrote what power means? Because this is not just her story. It's the story of every soul who's ever been told they were too much, too strange, too impossible to be worthy. It's for every heart that still beats through fear, through shame, through silence, still choosing to rise. And maybe, just maybe, it's for you. If her fire lit something inside you, if her journey made your pulse quicken, if you felt even for a moment that her fight could have been yours, then stay. Stay for what comes next. Because this isn't the end. It's the beginning of everything that refuses to die. And if your heart's still burning, if you felt the pull of her light even after the flame faded, subscribe to Sophie's Romance Collections. Because here, we tell tales that burn, and hearts that refuse to fade. The ruins still breathed, the scent of smoke and blood mingling with dawn's reluctant light. The world should have been quiet, but something beneath the silence stirred, not peace, not healing, but a pulse that refused to die. Kael stood amidst the broken stones, his gaze fixed on the sky as the moon bled crimson over the horizon. The wind whispered like a memory he could not unhear. The ashes of Aurelia's power still clung to the earth, faintly glowing, alive in ways mortal fire could never be. He closed his eyes. The bond still throbbed inside him, faint, ghostly, but undeniable. Her essence lingered, tethered to him through flame and blood and the promise that neither time nor death could undo. His hand brushed against the scorched soil where she had stood reborn, and the heat kissed his palm, reminding him that endings were never what they seemed. He heard it then. Not with his ears, but in the hollow between heartbeats. A whisper. A warning. She is not the only one. The voice was faint, coiling like smoke, ancient and cold. His pulse quickened, the weight of its meaning pressing through his ribs. For a moment, he thought it was the god she had slain, some remnant of its malice lingering, but the tone was different, softer, almost sorrowful. Kael turned toward the dark ridge that framed the valley. There, far beyond the ruins, the horizon pulsed faintly with light, not silver, but gold, rippling like molten dawn. A second mark. Another flame. Another curse awakening. His chest tightened. He remembered the prophecy whispered to him in dreams long before he met her. The bond is never singular. The flame divides so that the world may burn in halves, He had dismissed it then, believing his destiny ended with Aurelia. But fate was a cruel beast, never content with a single wound. He began to walk through the ruins, each step slow, deliberate. The earth cracked under his boots, whispering secrets from beneath. The night creatures had gone silent. Even the wolves hid from what was awakening. The scent of ash thickened as he passed the shattered altar where Aurelia had defied the gods. The stone still pulsed with faint warmth, her defiance carved into the world itself. "Was this your plan?" he murmured into the emptiness. His voice broke slightly, not from weakness but from something heavier, the understanding that love, when touched by prophecy, never truly belongs to those who live it. A gust of wind swept through, carrying fragments of her laughter, or maybe his memory of it. He couldn't tell anymore. He reached the edge of the ruins and paused. The world stretched endlessly ahead, a wasteland of shadow and light, and yet within that expanse, he felt her presence flicker, wild and distant, as though she were calling from beyond the veil. The mark on his forearm began to burn. It was faint at first, a subtle pulse beneath his skin, but it grew hotter with each heartbeat until the scent of singed flesh filled the air. He gritted his teeth and lifted his sleeve. The sigil had changed, where once it bore the single crescent of the cursed lineage, now a second line of fire cut through it. Two paths intertwined. Two flames rising. He stared at it, understanding dawning in the pit of his soul. The gods were not dead. They were reforming. The curse was spreading, reshaping itself, weaving through time to find new vessels. And she, the woman who burned the heavens, was only the beginning. He raised his gaze again. The horizon shimmered brighter now, gold fire dancing across the clouds. Somewhere out there, another soul awakened to the same torment, the same gift. Maybe they would hate Aurelia for what she unleashed. Maybe they would worship her. But either way, Kael knew what was coming. The world would not survive another like her. Unless he reached the next bearer first. His jaw tightened as he looked toward the direction of that distant flame. The moon's red reflection glimmered across his eyes, painting him in bloodlight. He could still feel Aurelia's heartbeat echoing faintly in the bond, like a dying star refusing to fade. "Your war isn't over," he whispered. "And neither is mine." The silence answered him with movement, a slow shift in the air, like something ancient stirring beneath the ruins. A shadow crawled along the stones, forming shape, substance, intention. It wasn't Aurelia. It wasn't divine. It was older than both. "Kael," it hissed. The sound slithered across the air, brushing the edge of sanity. "You carry her fire, but you are not her equal." He clenched his fists. "Then tell me who is." The shadow coalesced into a figure, tall and indistinct, its edges shimmering with fading light. It smiled, not with kindness, but with recognition. "The true Alpha hasn't risen yet. But when she does, your love will be her undoing." The words fell heavy, and before he could answer, the figure dissolved into mist, carried away by the bleeding wind. Kael stood there for a long while, his heart a battlefield of loyalty and dread. He had fought gods, defied prophecy, lost the only woman who could tame his curse, and still, fate demanded more. He turned away from the ruins, the air thick with the ghosts of what once was, and began to walk toward the rising gold light. Each step pulled him deeper into uncertainty, but he no longer feared it. He understood now, the prophecy had never been about one savior or one destroyer. It was about balance. For every flame that burns to cleanse, another rises to consume. As the wind carried whispers of her name across the valley, he closed his eyes. "If this is the path you chose," he said softly, "then I'll follow it to the end." The ground trembled beneath him, a soft rumble that hinted at awakening. The mountains ahead glowed faintly, not with sunlight but with fire buried deep within their roots. The world was changing again. Shifting to make room for something greater, darker, inevitable. And Kael, the once cursed Alpha, walked into that dawn knowing one truth burned brighter than prophecy itself: the bond they shared was not over. It never would be. Because somewhere beyond the horizon, her fire still lived. And somewhere beneath the rising sun, another flame waited, hungry, restless, ready to rise. As he vanished into the light, the final whisper returned, carried on the wind like a promise wrapped in warning. She is not the only one. And then silence. Only the slow crackle of distant fire and the soft heartbeat of a world about to awaken once more. The true Alpha had not yet risen. But soon, she would.